maybe I should just do my little bit before, like the Michael Scott, before Dwight gets on stage. Just start talking to the crowd. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about CRASD and what we are. Yesterday was our first board meeting of the year, and we had 40 applicants for about 10 new spots that we opened up the board a little bit. We were a little bit more around 6, and we expanded it. So we have about 16 people now on the board. We had tons of applicants, and it was a good addition. So I'm very excited about this group and what we have to offer for 2024. Just for some of the people who are new, last year we were awarded the NAR Diamond Certified recognition from the National Association of Realtors. And the goal for that is always to follow a benchmark of activities, and that really keeps us in line of how to focus and offer our members and the STAR members with just enough ammunition to get out there. It's tough enough for all of us. It's very hard. I mean, just being here talking about insurance requirements, you know, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Cap rates, policy. It's been tough. So we are a group that we hope we can get a diverse group of people in the commercial, residential, resi-mercial sector, which is a big sector, surprisingly, with SDAR. There's a lot of resi-mercial agents out there. And so a lot of our members do both. Some of them are learning. Some of them are experienced. Some are from national brokerages. Some of them are from smaller boutique firms. Some of them are property managers, insurance agents, whatever you're looking for. Our group probably has members that can help you. Some of the checklist requirements that we did last year that were beneficial to our members and also for NAR was we toured the Life Science building at the Boardwalk in Torrey Pines, which was very cool with Health Peak Properties. We worked with Stockton Capital for the Horton Plaza Adaptive Reuse Tour, which was an awesome tour. If you guys, a lot has changed since then. We hope to see it again now that they're making a lot of it residential. We toured, probably one of the first groups to ever do this, we toured the Airport Terminal 1 construction job, which was very cool. We had a private bus tour that was led by the airport, and that was very fun. And then finally, on a little bit smaller scale, we toured the second time now with Andrew Malik of Malik Infill Development, and we toured his North Park project, which is on El Cajon Boulevard above the Chicken Pot Pie building. And that was about a 40-person tour. And that really gave us a real-life experience of what it's like to be an apartment developer in San Diego. And he does a great job, so take a look at his stuff. Another requirement with STAR that we had to fulfill in association with NAR was 2 Envision conferences. And for people last year, we did one in South County. We wanted to highlight South County. And the other one we did was in downtown San Diego at the University Club. And both of them were heavily attended. This year we're planning to do a North County Envision. We did it 2 years ago in Ventana. We're going to do another one. We've got some board members now who are East County, and we wanted to try to highlight some East County projects, which we haven't done for a long time, so we want to bring it back there. Any of you in the crowd who want to help us get there, please email David or call David. He can be the guy. He's our executive director and a staff member at San Diego Association of Realtors. So he's been great to work with and a real leader in taking our group to the next level. I just wanted to mention that one of the requirements was education. So if you're looking to learn more, and if you're looking to understand either a full spectrum of educational requirements, some of the classes are intro to income property, and some of them are hold versus sell analysis. Some of them are evaluating alternative investment strategies. These are all classes that we offer to you as SDAR member and CRASD members. We have a 6-course commercial certification program that we had approved. So if you're looking to do a certification program, it's 6 courses and it's starting soon. It's run by a UCSD extension professor named Professor Mark Goldman. He's also known as theloanguy.com. And he does a really wonderful job. I took his certificate program at UCSD, and it was fantastic. One of the other things we did was an alternative investment strategy lunch and learn presentation where we focused on 1031 exchanges. And so today is a real pleasure to have you guys here, and we have some real experts here that are going to give you an introduction and kind of the complexities of their business, which is specialized. And we're really looking forward. We have the same panel as last year, so we'd like to keep it the same and see if some people might be in the crowd from last year. You can see how some things might have changed. So first, I'd like to present Joshua Ohl with CoStar. And Josh, thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to your presentation. He's going to give us a quick rundown of what's going on in San Diego County. Thank you, Josh.
Let's see. Thanks a lot. I appreciate given the opportunity to speak in front of everybody today and Commercial Real Estate Alliance of San Diego. My name is Josh Ohl. I'm the Director of Analytics with the CoStar Group. And I'm going to give you about a 30,000-foot view and a crash course in what's been happening in the real estate markets here. And in the interest of time, I would suggest buckle up and let's get started with the economy. We're going to just look at a couple slides and sort of just give you some key metrics that are happening, impacting some decisions in the space markets and whatnot. So I think one of the important indicators here is that inflation is finally being outpaced by wage growth. I know the last reading came in at 3.4% nationally. It's going to probably be a little bit higher in San Diego, which we've been running a little bit hotter here than nationally, but our reading will probably come out in about a month from now. But I think wage growth is still expected to hit about 5% in 2024, so we might expect that wage growth should continue to outpace inflation. Interest rates, though, are spiking, right? We're seeing it on consumer loans, we're seeing it on auto loans, we're seeing it on credit card debt. The average credit card debt's about $6,000 per card. It's exceeded $1 trillion. Auto delinquencies have reached their about highest level since 2006. Which isn't surprising considering the average new loan is about $750, and I still can't grasp the fact that you see 20-year-olds driving around in $75,000 Broncos all over the place, but that's probably why the delinquency rate's so high right now. At the same time, consumers aren't necessarily loaded up with debt. Personal savings are still advancing sort of in terms of the long-term trend, and we've actually had a little bit wider delta. People are still saving money. Wage growth is good, so but people are still spending money, which is good for the retail market, right? Consumers are going to play a large part in where the economy is going to go this year, in particular the retail market. So let's keep spending money and we'll keep supporting the retail market. Now the office market has definitely hit some dislocation, and this slide I think speaks to primarily the reason why. It's looking at 23 Q4 and 23 Q3 leasing activity versus sort of that benchmark of 2015 to 2019. Right? What stands out here is leasing activity has remained relatively consistent in the amount of new deals that have been signed. But what's starkly different is the average lease size has shrunk considerably and leasing volume is down notably. They're both down about 15 to 20%. It's not just the past 2 quarters, but that's been pretty much running standard now for about the last 6 quarters or so. The office market, it's no longer in a period of change. It has simply changed as a result of what happened earlier in the pandemic. We can hear return to work orders, this, that, and the other, but there's a lot of hybrid. There's a lot of sort of increasingly moving to efficiently occupy space right now. Sandag's lease downtown, Sandag's lease downtown was, I think, the perfect example of what's happening, right? It's a flight to quality. They left an 80s vintage building. They went to new construction on Union Street. They went from about 115,000 square feet to 87,000 square feet. Their effective rents are going to be a little bit higher at their new space given its new construction, but their gross monthly rents are actually lower because they're in a 25% smaller space. So a lot of the larger users are shrinking their spaces to gain more efficiency when they're in the office. This is a supply-demand vacancy chart. This is one of the bread and butter analytic charts with CoStar. The green line horizontally, that's our vacancy rate. We're at about 11%. Our office market has not been disrupted nearly as badly here as it has been in, for instance, like LA, where vacancy has risen by about 500 basis points since the end of 2019. It's only up about 200 basis points here. But I want to draw your attention to those blue lines on the side of that big black line. That's a lot of supply. It's almost all speculative. That's about to deliver. We are going to hit peak vacancy later on this year when those properties deliver. They're primarily downtown, all the projects we keep hearing about, RAD, Horton Plaza, the West Project. Right down the road, we had La Jolla Commons 3 with 212,000 square feet deliver in mid-2023, and that property is still fully vacant right now. Right, these properties all started on construction on spec. You know, they're figuring going to get stronger rent growth. They have to keep rental rates afloat, and then the office market has completely changed over the course of the past several years when these projects started breaking ground. But that's the expectation. There's definitely going to be some difficulty in the office market for the next several quarters and probably next several years. We are going to have elevated vacancy, and this doesn't even account for all the dark shadow space that's hanging over the market that's unoccupied. That's not being used, it's not being listed, it's just unoccupied space. So we probably, if you go to downtown, we have a headline vacancy of about 25 or 26. It's probably closer to about 40% when you account for the space that's not being used. And it's no surprising then that rent growth is falling, right? We ended the year at about 1% year-over-year rent growth. We anticipate that that's going to continue falling. That's the face rents. If you look at it in real terms, rents have been falling when you factor in, TIs, free rent, inflation. Rents have been falling probably for about the last year, and we anticipate those rents to continue falling in real terms for the next several quarters and probably the next couple years as a result. Enough of the doom and gloom on the office side. Let's get something that's a little more exciting to talk about, or at least a happier side to talk about, and that's the retail market, which is probably in one of its strongest positions that we've seen in San Diego in years. It's not just San Diego, though. It's spread across the country. The market is exceptionally tight. This is looking at different tranches of leasing activity. The thing is, leasing activity is actually moderated compared to where we were 2015 to 2019, but it's not really a result of bad dynamics or bad fundamentals. It's just there's not a lot of space available in the market. Leasing activity is being driven by the small users, those sub 3,000 square footers, the quick service restaurants, the service-oriented tenants are the ones that are taking spaces. There's been less leasing at the top of the market because a lot of the top of the market's not being occupied or is not being marketed for lease. A lot of those are in the process of lining up approvals, probably mixed-use approaches to a lot of those projects. And you can look at vacancy and availability. They're almost running in lockstep, and we're running at a 15-year low on the availability rate, right? And we're not going to have any new supply likely coming to market in the immediate near term that's going to help sort of mitigate and provide more brick and mortar opportunities for retailers in the near term at least. And as a result, rent growth has responded favorably. Last year, we hit peak rent growth in the middle of 2023. It started moderating a little bit. I would suggest that our forecast here over the next year is probably a little too bearish. It might probably be maybe more closer to like CPI +1 is what we might look at rent growth for the next year or so. Assuming that availability remains as tight as it is and rent growth continues to move as well as it has been, we might then see some development come out of the ground, or at least more mixed-use projects with a retail component. Geez, this feels like a seesaw. So now we're going back to a property type that's has run into a little bit of challenges over the course of the past year. So I don't know if the market's I don't think it's quite accurate to say it's normalizing. It's just we're seeing a little bit weaker demand in the industrial side. This is looking at similar leasing volume in the tranches that we've, in different tranches on the industrial side. And I think what stands out to me particularly is those spaces, 50,000, 100,000 square feet. The leasing activity is largely dried up at the top of the market. A lot of those large occupiers are expressing a lot of caution. Macroeconomic conditions are still impacting their business decisions. Inflation, interest rates, all of those things are sort of making a lot of hesitation on those users. On the other end of the market, on the bottom, you see there's a lot of demand, and it's been driving the leasing activity as those sort of that 5 to 25,000 foot segment, those small bay spaces, those continue to see huge demand right now. That demand is stable. I think the small bay, 50,000 square foot properties and below, the vacancy rate is still only about 2%. So there's definitely a lot of leverage for landlords in those spaces. Our supply-demand vacancy chart here, yes, vacancy is at about 6%. Of course, this is a little bit impacted by flex, and we've definitely seen a slowdown in demand on the biotech side that's taking flex and lab space. We do have a lot of speculative supply following a lot of occupancy losses in 2023, down primarily in South County. That will ultimately get absorbed, but there are some projects that are pausing down until that space does in fact get absorbed. But there's a few areas of the region that have the demand drivers that Otay Mesa does. We're going to open up a second port of entry, hopefully it was initially, I think, going to be in the next year, but now we're looking probably closer to 2026 or so. But those are huge demand drivers in South County. Those spaces will ultimately get occupied. Absorption will return. Inventories are clearing off shelves, which is good for retailers and for the industrial side as well. But that's also, when you look at sort of the domino effect of the space markets, right? You look at for sale homes, the for sale home market has fallen, right? So that has impacted home goods stores, which have bled a little bit in the past year and a half as mortgage rates remain elevated. And sorry about that. And as a result, we've seen a little bit lower demand on the industrial side because those retailers don't necessarily need as much space to store their goods. But we anticipate demand probably returning in the next couple quarters, and that space will get absorbed. Rent growth has moderated, however. Concessions are still pretty minimal, particularly on the small bay side. We are probably getting more toward a long-term 4% year-over-year rent growth, which is our long-term average, and we should probably be okay there. Excuse me, Thor, do you mind stepping outside? Thanks. So on the apartment side, we've seen definitely a slowdown in household formation over the past couple quarters here. It's been driven by the luxury sector. The blue bars here are the 4- and 5-star Class A properties. The mid-tier is yellow. So there's definitely been some economic distress, particularly in those mid-tier and workforce housing units, which has led to a slowdown in demand. So the luxury sector, which has generally driven demand across the region, occupying new units, there's definitely been a slowdown in some of those properties that are in lease up. They've seen sort of, instead of creating new households to occupy new spaces, we're seeing more of a shuffling of the chairs, if you will, and you're seeing, maybe one household move from this project to a new project instead of creating a new household to occupy that project. We anticipate probably demand is going to soften probably, through the first quarter, through the second quarter before we probably get our baseline and move forward at a healthier rate. We are obviously serially undersupplied in San Diego with housing. We don't build enough. I think we have about 7,400 market rate units across the market that are currently under construction. This is going to help mitigate some of that. The county owns a lot of land, the city owns a lot of land. We're probably going to get some transit-oriented or transit-adjacent development on some of those parcels across the county to bring up some sort of middle market inventory. You can see some of the ones like, this is 101 Ash. There's an investor that wants to convert that to affordable. Maybe we'll talk about some of this later. Tower 180. And then some of the other commercial projects that are going to bring some new inventory to market. And then you look at, for instance, the Westfields that sold in Mission Valley. They're going to probably have some mixed-use element to them too, and improve housing on that site. But as household formation has waned, we've definitely seen a drop in rent growth. The 6 past months, we've seen rents drop by about 2.9%. So rent growth year over year is about 1.5%. While low, it's still important, I think, to take the perspective on a wider term that that's still the second strongest rent growth among major West Coast markets. Orange County is the leader, but we're still in a pretty strong position. So the slowdown in rent growth is not unique to San Diego. It's permeated across the entire country. But we're still in a pretty stable position. But landlords are having to correct their rents a little bit and revise their rents due to more competition for renters at the front door, and losing a little bit demand at the back door as well. So on the sales side, this is probably one of the things that's wrecked the investment market, or not wrecked, that's maybe a little harsh, but impacted the investment market as much as it has. It's just the rise in interest rate, right? You look at the 7 past cycles, the average rate hike was about 3.4% over 22 months. Over the course of about 16 months, we eclipsed 5% in that clip. So it's just a very quick run-up in interest rates, and I think that shocked the system for the most part. And we're still dealing with the effects of that, even if the Fed fundraise probably is going to remain, if not probably start lowering when the Fed starts meeting later this year. Depending on who you ask, we might see, I think Wells Fargo is looking at like 150 basis point drop in the Fed fund rate later throughout the year. So we've probably hit the highs, but we'll see where we go from here. We'll see when investment starts to return to the market. Cap rates are starting to edge higher as a result. Owners are becoming a little bit more responsive to conditions. Some are still holding out for that peak pricing from 2022. It's still difficult to get that, but there is more responsiveness, and we're starting to see cap rates move upward that we've seen probably throughout all 2023. But this is what's happened to the landscape. You can see just deal flow is just fallen across the market. The fourth quarter apartment sales reached, I think, their lowest level that we've seen in probably at least 10 or 15 years, at least on a quarterly number of deals. So it's dropped dramatically. You can see office, it's not surprising, especially when you look at the moderating rent growth and lack of demand in that product, that you're seeing such a significant drop-off in deal flow there. Industrial markets largely being driven by owner users. They're the ones that are trying to secure occupancy right now. And then you're looking at the retail market, which is still stable, but you're still seeing a drawdown and pullback. And I think a lot of owners are just, particularly on the retail side, why sell in a market like this if you don't have to? Maybe hold on to the property. We haven't seen tons of distressed sales. I would anticipate we might see a few more come throughout the year. But so far, that hasn't hit here like it has in other markets across the country. So sort of to put a bow on what we've talked about today, recession may be averted as consumers continue to spend money and layoffs remain relatively stable across San Diego. Office tenants are seeking more efficiency with their space needs, which typically means that they're reducing their footprints. Retail remains strong and availability is still trending at all-time lows in San Diego, so that's led to a little bit less leasing, but it's still a super strong market just because there's few opportunities out there for retailers right now. The industrial space market's bifurcated right now. The bottom of the market, not the bottom of the market, the smaller spaces, the small bay properties, 50,000 square feet and below, are still doing exceptionally well. It's just the top of the market where we're starting to see some of that definite moderation over the course of the past year. Apartment demand is moderated, household formation is down, rents have down. The spring leasing season is going to obviously have a big direction on where we're going to go probably for the next 6 months or so we're probably just going to buckle up and wait to see how that goes. And we might be, the worst of the rise in concessions that we've seen in apartments might be behind us, so we might start pushing those off to the side and getting rid of those as we get into 2024 a little bit here. And investors just continue to show hesitation. We're probably going to continue a lot like that, if I had to guess, through 2024. Not uniformly, but 2024 might start to improve if we start lowering interest rates throughout the year, but we'll see how much interest rates lower. And with that, I thank you. I'm going to join Aaron and Anthony over here for some questions with Chris. Thanks.
Did everybody get all that? Yeah? Try to cover all the sectors there, so hopefully everybody got all that and took your pictures, and this is probably the most real information you'll get about our county right here. So again, Josh works for the CoStar Group here. I believe the office is right here? Okay, now they're a little bit down this way. So again, they offer services for investors, agents, everything on the commercial side. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact David or Josh directly. So now we get to our practitioners. And of course, I really wanted to focus on retail, which is what my background is, and then also multifamily, which a lot of our members are here. And Josh was kind enough to step in on doing industrial and office. So if you have any questions specifically for them, please, after the panel's done, you can ask them. So Aaron, thank you for being here again with the Bovee Group with Marcus and Millichap. San Diego adds the fewest units of any Southern California market. What will it take for our region, if any, to keep up with any sort of supply for the demand?
All over, but in can you hear me? Oh, just keep it. I would say, in seriousness, there's a multifaceted approach I think that the city and even the county has to take into account. Streamlining the approval process, of course, I think that's the major starting point. Reducing fees, whether it's development fees, permit fees, and through the development process, incentivizing developers. Josh talked a little bit about this, the public-private partnerships, and zoning reform. Streamlining the approval process kind of reminds me of a story. I took my kids and the wife, took the family back to Ohio for the holidays. And as I was talking to my dad one night about real estate, he's in real estate, and if you guys don't know my dad, he's not a government fan, let's just say that. We started talking about approval processes, getting permits, and he was ranting and raving about taking 16 weeks to get approvals for a project. I go, Dad, that's going to take a year out in California. And his jaw drops, and he just goes, how do you get anything done? That's a good point. It's like if the city and the county can streamline, simplify the approval process, I think that'll take a lot of risk away from these developers, make it more conducive to these people taking the risk and putting projects together, taking and getting rid of that red tape. Reducing fees between city to city in the county here, you can go from $17,000 worth of fees up to $53,000 of fees. These cities have to understand that they're in competition with one another as well. So being able to reduce those fees and incentivizing these developers to come in to provide housing is important. Also reducing those fees also helps get a variety of different types of projects in the area. Incentivizing, of course, is another way to go. And then the zoning reforms. The city of San Diego's done a very good job in implementing complete communities. The TPA, you've got, well, TPA is going to become SDA. You also have, you qualified opportunity zones. So all of that is doing a good job into bringing new development, new product, new units into the area.
Thank you. So I thought we'd jump into retail next. We just heard Josh speak about the lack of square footage for retail. So someone who does a lot of leasing deals and sales deals, and this is Anthony Acosta with the Dues Commercial Group out of North Park, also a board member of CRASD. I thought we'd ask Anthony, the population's growing, multi-family is building as fast as possible, and life science has boomed. Will we be seeing any growth in San Diego of retail now that the COVID era is over and people are spending more? If so, what parts?
Yeah, I think so. It's you do see a lot of QSRs popping up. You do see like some sit-down restaurants converting to drive-through tenants. For example, the Islands Burgers here down the street, La Jolla Village Square is turning to Chick-fil-A. The Black Angus over on Friars Road, that turned into In-N-Out. And Soup Plantation down in Main Street, Chula Vista, turned into another In-N-Out. So QSRs are definitely on the rise. It's just hard to find the land and the cost of the location for QSR. But general retail shopping centers, I think it's hard, especially when the focus right now is housing. So it's hard not to go vertical and just build retail, traditional retail, when you can build like 200 units on top of your ground floor retail. So, but that being said, you do see like Sudbury has built a handful of retail projects in town, and they're performing relatively well. There's little to no vacancy in their shopping centers right now. And so I don't know, these developers may pivot and start to be more bullish on retail development, but again, housing is kind of the focus, so you definitely see a lot of mixed-use projects being built throughout town.
Thank you. So back to multifamily. As Josh mentioned earlier, we saw how the rent growth has stabilized or even gone down a little bit from previous years. So now that it's happened, what does this mean for apartment investors or apartment builders who built the last few years, or what's to come with how they use their pro formas? What has happened to people who have built the last couple of years, especially kind of like, not these huge buildings, but also mid-grade buildings? We toured Andrew Malick's North Park property last year, which is a perfect example of that size of infill development. I'd like to get an understanding of what are the investors doing right now?
Splitting the market up into IPA, institutional, let's call it 100 plus units, and then our private client, 20 to 80 units. In that private client space, it's not just the apartment rents that we're adjusting. I mean, interest rates are up, construction costs, all of this is factoring in on how the investors are looking at certain deals. We'll start with the developers. We are getting a lot of calls from people that are getting permit ready, and then they're going out and getting their quotes, and they're looking at their project and saying, well, with the tight lending standards, the higher interest rates, and the cost now, the project doesn't work. So we are seeing more inventory coming out with the permit-ready status and ready to go. In a normal market, most of the builders are looking for that and pushing off. It's funny that the land, apartment land, is a hot space right now. We are selling quite a bit of it in that private client, smaller space, and it's more attractive to get the raw land, to go through their own permitting process, their own designs, and then their expectations is it'll be in a different market when they come, when they're building and coming out to market and refinance. So it is a little bit harder to sell that permit-ready product right now. On the existing side, Josh mentioned it, sales were down to its lowest amount for existing apartment sales in that private client space. Now, we can't all have a 2021. I think we all were making money hand over fist, and there was a lot of money out there, a lot of deals going down, so maybe this was a regression to the mean. This year should have definitely more transaction volume, but the underwriting standards are the underwriting that investors are doing right now are much more critical, using real numbers, real interest rates, looking at and predicting out the future with rent growth that won't be there, so our cap rates are coming down.
Okay, thank you. Complicated. Complicated. Thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. That's a tough one. So I thought we'd move to Josh to talk a little bit about industrial and office. We're hearing a lot about adaptive reuse projects, especially where office projects are turning into residential living quarters. I know in your presentation you had a few, so we did get some examples. But is this a real phenomena to assist with our housing crisis?
Is this on? Yeah? Yeah. It's a phenomenon. I just don't know how widespread it's going to be here in San Diego. There are a lot of complications associated with it. So it's not something that you can say there's 10 office buildings, for instance, that are all vacant or 75% vacant. Let's just go ahead and move forward, right? There's issues with plumbing, there's issues with floor layouts, there's issues with HVAC systems, windows, size of floor plans, shape of buildings. There's all these standards that have to be taken into account, and then obviously the cost of doing so. How much does it cost to acquire that property? How much does it cost to convert that property? So I think it's going to be a very piecemeal approach. And we see, Tower 180, we'll see if that one is going to be a model moving forward, right? They bought that property. I mean, that's probably that was an interesting sale because I think that sold in 2016 for $54 million. They got an $82 million, they took out $82 million in debt to finance the purchase and renovation of the property. The renovation of the property finished in February of 2020. So that 390,000 square foot building sold at 88% vacancy at the end of 2023. For $61 million. So again, they got it at like 140 a square foot. They're going to dump about $140 million into that property. We'll see. That's an older property. It has big windows, so that's probably a little bit easier. But again, there's just complications. There's probably going to have to be more of a public and private sort of collaboration to make some of these projects feasible. But it's not going to be sort of something that's going to spread across the market. It's going to, when you look nationally, it accounts for like a fraction of inventory that's under construction and that's come to market. And I don't really anticipate that being any different here than it would be anywhere else.
Thank you. Going back to retail, Anthony, what are retailers doing? What are landlords doing in order to compete with Amazon and other online retailers here in San Diego County?
I think the small mom and pop retailers are getting pretty savvy online, in part because social media has definitely helped them. We had a little space that was leased by a surf shop, and their online presence grew so much that they ended up buying their small industrial property on Marina Boulevard. So they vacated, bought their building, and then we released that space to a soft good woman boutique store, which was surprising because we we didn't expect it to be like a clothing store. And she had a couple locations already. She was doing really well, and she had like 15,000 followers on Instagram. So you definitely start seeing these small mom and pop tenants kind of utilizing social media and kind of creating their own narrative, and it's definitely been helping them a lot. And I have 4,500 square feet of retail in Bird Rock, and I just toured with another women's clothing store. And I don't know why they need that much space, but they're saying that they actually they want a portion of that space to be allocated for obviously for storage, and then also for like a studio where they could take photos and upload it online and market their models and stuff. So it's pretty cool, pretty interesting to see that. So a lot of these tenants are getting savvy online, so that's and through social media, and it's definitely been pretty cool to see the mom and pop tenants kind of prosper.
So I just sticking on retail one more time now that I have you up here. 2023, what was, let's say, your favorite deal or worst deal that you worked on? Just give us one example of a deal.
Yeah, we this nonprofit tenant reached out to us. Initially, they were looking for like just small office space, and then in City Heights, and then a few months later, they call us again and say, hey, actually, we're looking to buy a building. Please let us know if you know any off-market opportunities. And they're looking in the $1.2 million range. And we ended up finding them an off-market property, about like 10,000 square feet, three buildings on 3 acres of land. And we actually closed on it, and it was about 6.9 million. And so if you ever get a call from a nonprofit tenant and they're just looking for a small office space, I would just meet them. But yeah, and now they have 3 buildings. Leases were expiring soon, and one of the buildings got kind of like a community building, so they can kind of host the community there and do community events.
All right, thank you, and congratulations. Multifamily, Aaron. Again, what are some new areas of San Diego or areas of San Diego that people are looking to invest in that were historically not great places to put their money in, or places that they would advise their clients not to put their money in?
Well, if we look past, or we look back through the last couple of decades, I'm assuming this is like a North Park, Golden Hills, even City Heights has significant redevelopment, both public money and private money coming in. I would say the new areas, I don't know how secret this is anymore, but Barrio Logan is an excellent area, an excellent example. Rich in culture, revised their zoning last year. The Coastal Commission approved complete communities, so you see quite a bit of development going into these areas. Even Logan Heights, right above it, the rent per square foot is very high, and a lot of properties that you can take from C conditions to B to A. So we see a lot of money coming in from investors in these areas.
Thank you. And our final question is for Josh. Last year, we had our Envisions Connection tour in downtown San Diego, and we heard about a lot from the developers of what they're planning to do. However, all the media is telling us that no leases have been signed and no businesses are coming. What areas are the life science or the businesses that were supposed to be going downtown, what areas are they actually going to? Or are they going to come back downtown?
The life science market, since we'll concentrate on that since that's mostly what's getting built downtown right now, is sort of undergoing, once venture capital started pulling back in 2023, it sort of just created a new regime from what we had seen in 2020 and 2021. The downtown projects in particular, there's a lot of space available. Horton Plaza, RAD, I think that's about 2.5 million square feet, something like that, no tenants lined up. The challenge is, I sort of alluded to it, is that these projects were underwritten at rents at X level, and tenants just don't want to pay that. But they can't really bring down their rents right now on those spaces. They'll ultimately get occupied. I'm not sure whether it will be life science tenants. Maybe it's just going to be more of the banks or accounting firms or government agencies. I think the Navy has a chance to perhaps take the IQHQ site. Makes sense. They already have a regional headquarters right there. They're probably going to be less price sensitive on the rates that are being asked there. The life science users, the difficulty with trying to create a brand new life science hub downtown or a life science cluster, which is what is happening with those projects, is that we already have a firmly established one in the UC San Diego area in North County, right? In North County, you also have about 2.5 million square feet of life science space that's also under construction and available for lease. So you have a lot of brand new space right in your incubator atmosphere where all the other life science firms are. The likelihood of those firms going downtown is probably less. They're probably more reliant, if they are going to try to secure life science, it would probably have to be from a tenant that's not in San Diego right now that wants a downtown location. Maybe someone that's already located in Boston or something, or the Bay Area, and that wants to come down and just be in a downtown location. But it'll be difficult to definitely glean demand from existing life science tenants up in North County.
Well, with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed your first breakout session, Commercial Real Estate, presented by CRASD. If you have any questions, you can ask after the panel. Our next group is going to be coming on shortly, and it's going to be all about accessory dwelling units, ADU, moderated by Andrew Greer. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing you. And again, we're CRASD, and if you're interested in joining us, please contact David, our executive director, and he can gear you towards the right way, guide you towards the right way. So thank you so much, and enjoy the conference. Good job. You might have some questions, but I definitely want to get a picture of all of us. Alliance of San Diego, which is the commercial arm of San Diego Association of Realtors. And I'm your president, Christopher Sohai. So thank you so much for being here. So this is... So I really wanted to keep this as one of our breakout sessions. This is our third time we're doing this now. Yes, third time. So we did this before COVID, kind of during COVID, and now here we are again, 2024. And I'm sure from these fine gentlemen here who are professionals in their own right, of the sector and specialists and pioneers of the ADU, they're all friends of mine as well. This is a real special treat to have them here, especially after all the changes from one year to the other with this new segment. So with that said, I'd like to hand it over to Andrew Greer. And I've known Andrew for a while now. He's a great real estate catalyst and a great person to know here in San Diego County. And Andrew, please take it over. Thank you for being here, guys.
All right, so I'll give you a quick rundown of what we're going to do today. We're going to start out with Assistant Director from Development Services, Gary Geiler, giving a presentation on some of the new things that have changed on ADUs here in the city of San Diego. And then we'll be doing some questions panel style with Frankie Rodriguez of ADU Geeks and Gary to go over for you guys. If you have any questions you would like processed, my Venmo is Andrew Greer 7, and just tag it. And remember, it's a bidding process. So, without further ado, Gary, if you'll give us the presentation on what's happening.
Good morning. How many of you have sold a property with an ADU on it? All right. How many have a current listing with an ADU on it? How many have identified on certain multifamily properties you can have unlimited ADUs? Excellent. I love it. Okay. My name is Gary Gallagher. I'm the Assistant Director for the Development Services Department. So I oversee all of the permitting processing and implementation of all the new rules and regulations both at the local, state, and federal level. So we have really gone through a lot of changes, as Andrew mentioned, with the ADU rules dating back to probably 2015. I've been with the department for 26 years, and it's really good to see that our efforts at changing the rules have resulted in more units throughout the city, and it's brought attention not only locally at the state level, but nationwide to San Diego and what we're doing with our ADU rules and our bonus ADU program. So with that, I just briefly want to mention only three new rules this year, which is good, because previous years there have been a slew of them, and some of them have conflicted with each other. And then I will go over what our kind of existing baseline is for some of our development regulations for ADUs. The bonus ADU program, because a lot of people are still not really aware of it, but it does have some potential for a lot of units on some of these multifamily sites that can take them on above and beyond what the density allows per the zone. And then I'll just end with some trends and some numbers to show you what the success we've had in San Diego with ADUs. If anyone listened to the mayor's State of the City speech the other night, we got up to 9,000 units, which was, typically we're about 4,500 units a year, new dwelling units. So to hit 9,000 is really a testament to what the ADU bonus program has done, ADUs in general, and our complete communities program. So it's really good. It's put the spotlight on the city as a pro-housing city. So the first three that we have this year, AB 434, this requires cities and municipalities to provide pre-approved designs for ADUs within their jurisdictions. They have to have this plan scheme in place by January 1st of 2025. So in order to do this, cities need to start looking at options for this. We are already ahead of everybody else. We've already included, the County of San Diego has plans, the City of Encinitas has plans. I've worked with the Housing Commission to come up with some pre-approved plans. So we identify those on our website. Anybody can use those. What those have been pre-reviewed, they've gone through the city process already. So we've done those reviews, and they are pre-approved. So then you can take that plan and use it on a site-by-site basis. Obviously, there's some considerations depending on the site that you put that pre-approved plan. So you're going to have to do a site plan. But that's really going to help cut down on costs for people that want to do ADUs and processing time with the local jurisdictions. AB 976. Currently, California laws prohibit local agencies from imposing owner occupancy requirements on ADUs. And this basically extended those provisions beyond. So local jurisdictions still cannot preclude you from having owner occupancy requirements on an ADU. Typically, you had to get an agreement signed and recorded by the owner that they will live on the property, either in the ADU or the dwelling unit. That is no longer required in the city of San Diego for ADUs. JADUs, which are junior accessory dwelling units, those are smaller in size and they're usually within the existing footprint of the building or an attached garage. Those do require an agreement with the county. And that's part of the review process. The planner identifies that this is going to be a JADU. There's a form that you agreed to sign, and we, as part of our permit review process, go to the county and record that. There's no changes there. And then finally, the big one is AB 1033. Has anyone heard about this one? Okay. Similar to SB 9, allowing for condos on single-family properties. So California historically has prohibited the sale of ADUs, and a lot of the regulations actually specifically call this out, that they cannot be for sale. We took advantage of our updates to the municipal code for affordable houses, affordable ADU bonus program to actually allow for sale. So we were kind of ahead of everyone else, and the state kind of looked at that and said, maybe there's an opportunity to condo properties with ADUs. So this will allow homeowners to sell one or more ADUs separately from their primary residence. It does not require local jurisdictions, however, to do this. So it's an opt-in provision. The city of San Diego is seriously looking at this, as we do all the bills that come from the state. Sometimes the bills that come from the state actually originated in San Diego, so we're typically on board. This mayor is very pro-housing, so we are seriously considering it. We're looking at it. There's a lot of coordination that needs to be done in terms of the State Subdivision Map Act and what involves a condo process. It's a little different from your typical condo development projects because we'll have to look at other things such as easements, access rights, and those types of things. It will need California Department of Real Estate approval, obviously. So we're looking into that, and like we did with SB 9, we allow for the subdivision of single-family properties to allow for ADUs. Now, what's interesting in the case of San Diego, however, we allow more than 2 ADUs on the property. In some cases, some of these larger multifamily sites, I mean, we've gotten 100 ADUs on the property. We're seeing stuff 12, 14, 16, 18, which is good. So those are the 3 new laws. City of San Diego is already on board with 2 of them. We're looking at the 3rd one, and the other guys can talk about the other jurisdictions within the county about where they're at. Just the basics on the San Diego City rules. We are one of the most liberal in the state, and we've been noted for that. The use, it's an independent living dwelling unit, and this is to address housing. So it cannot be rented for less than 31 days. You're not doing a short-term vacation rental on this ADU. It does not preclude you, if you have your main residence, from doing that as a short-term vacation rental, you living in the ADU. The ADU geeks might talk about some of the new developments. Some people prefer to move into their brand new ADU and rent out the front house. These are allowed in all zones, all residential zones. We really opened it up to not just single and multifamily zones, but all mixed-use zones that allow for residential, and a lot of our commercial zones allow for residential. And we're seeing more interest in some of those larger commercial and multifamily zones that can handle 12, 14, 20 ADUs. Size limits, minimum 150 square feet. That's per the building code. That's just the amount that you need. Up to 1,200 square feet. So we're not like other jurisdictions that say 80% of the main residential unit and all that kind of stuff. Very simple, not only for my staff, but for the public to know, it's up to 1,200 square feet maximum. And that's for each ADU that you have. So some of these larger lots that have FARs of 0.8, 1.2, you can get a couple ADUs of 1,000 square feet on them. Setbacks, this is something also that we took the lead on years ago. We said everything at 0 foot. Let them encroach, because a lot of the older communities have garages built at setback lines. That's the rear or the side yard. So why not just put an ADU up on top of their garage? We got a lot of units that way. People were converting stuff that was encroaching. Obviously, there's building code requirements. You gotta have windows and openings. You gotta be fire rated. You gotta be nice to your neighbors, that sort of thing. But it really helps. And council kind of dialed that back because of some of the second stories we were doing. We were allowing up to the height limit of the zone, which in a single family zone is typically 30 feet. So you were seeing 2-story ADUs at 30 feet. It's now if you are going to go above a first story, it's got to be 4 foot on the side and rear yard setbacks. That was a change over the last year. They also added, some street tree requirements, a couple of trees for landscaping as they're redeveloping some of these properties. Parking, we made it simple as well. No parking required at all, except in the coastal zone in some situations. So if you're converting that garage, you do not need to replace that parking. If you're demoing that garage to build an ADU, you do not need to provide parking. What we're seeing is people are still trying to, on the larger multifamily, they're trying to provide parking because it's part of the performance, part of the rents, right? To provide the parking, but you do not need to. So that makes it real clear and simple for my staff and for designers, architects, engineers, that they do not need to provide that. If you do provide that, it's got to be within the property. So a lot of these properties, you need to know where your property line is. It does not end where the curb is and your grass starts. Sometimes it's 10, 15 feet in from the curb. And that parking space can't be out in the right of way, technically. So it's important design consideration, but no parking required. The coastal zone is a little unique. We've been battling with the Coastal Commission for years on some solutions. They've agreed mostly with us on how to process these. So they do require parking in certain parking beach impact areas along the coastline, which is fine with us. The last point, these are all ministerial reviews. So most people are familiar with discretionary entitlements and conditional use permits. I get calls from lenders and appraisers and people out of the state. How can you do this? We do it ministerially. It's a building permit. It's a by right process. If you meet these regulations, you're coming into the building permit, and we're reviewing it within 30 days under state law. Within 30 days. Within coastal, they finally got us to, meet us midway, and we're doing an administrative coastal review. And that means that we can make certain findings and have it processed as a ministerial building permit. Coastal permits take up to a year sometimes. That invites California Environmental Quality Act review, it involves community plan groups, neighbors get noticed. It can go to a hearing, it can get appealed, it can get dragged out. We wanted to make sure that you're able to do an ADU, which is basically accessory in the coastal zone, simple as a building permit. And they finally agreed to it. So that's huge. briefly, single-family zone. So what can you do in a single-family zone? You can do attached or detached. You can do a conversion of existing habitable or non-habitable space. You can have one JADU and one ADU. In the multifamily zones, attached or detached or conversion of space as well. And you get 2 by right ADUs. You can also convert habitable and non-habitable space. You can do the conversion as well. So in most multifamily zones that we see, like an RM11, the old R3000, R1 zones, you get 2 dwelling units on a 6,000 square foot lot, right? So that limits a lot of the density that we were allowed. So we opened up the ADUs to the multifamily zones. So you're getting those 2 base units by right in the zone. You're getting 2 additional ADUs by right. And then you're converting any habitable or non-habitable area as well. A great example is go up to Claremont Drive in Claremont. You see those large multifamily sites, maybe a duplex or a triplex. Off the alley, there's 4 or 5 garages. They're converting every one of those garages to small units, maybe combine a couple of them. And they're deep lots, so they're getting as many units on there as possible. We're also doing that through our bonus accessory dwelling unit program. These are single-family properties, 1 single-family house in the front. There's 4 units in the back. 4 units. So the accessory dwelling unit bonus program started a couple of years ago. And basically it said we want to allow in transit priority areas, sustainable development areas, stuff that's near transit, and within the city of San Diego, almost everything is within transit distance, to allow for an additional dwelling unit for an ADU as long as you deed restrict a unit. So they deed restrict one, they get a market rate. They deed restrict another one, they get a market rate. So they can basically stack up to the bulk and scale of what the zone allows in terms of FAR and setbacks and that sort of thing, and get what they could have normally got. So we're seeing a lot of these typically in the 4 to 6 range, but as I said, we have some lots that are going up to 100. There are some now into the 20 unit range. So how does it work? You deed restrict for 10 or 15 years. We actually changed the deed restriction last year to get a very low income at only 10 years. Typically, deed restrictions for affordable housing are 55 years. That's a long time, right? So by saying you just deed restrict very low income for 10 years or low and moderate at 15 years, that's an opportunity to get additional units. So everyone you deed restrict, you get a bonus unit. And you can keep stacking. That's when you're within a sustainable development area. Outside of that, we're going to limit it to just the one. 1 deed restriction, 1 market rate. So that's 2 additional units on top of whatever you're getting in that zone by right. We work closely with the Housing Commission and applicants to make sure that they understand what those deed restrictions mean, what those income levels are, for the time frame they are, and it's during the review process where we handle all of this. And we've gotten a lot of these units. Overall activity, this is just back from 2020. I'd love going back to 2017 because it was like 10. But we've gotten, almost 6,000 applications for ADs over the past 4 years. We've permitted almost 4,000. And we've got a lot of these, couple thousand built already. So these are units that are coming online and they're getting built in a timely fashion, which is really great. The bonus program as well just started recently. We're getting a couple hundred units in this program as well. It's really moving very quickly. We're being recognized throughout the state, as I said. The Casita Coalition, which is an organization that promotes ADUs, had a convention here in San Diego of all places, to highlight what we're doing here, not only with our regular regulations, but with our bonus regulations. And officials from California and throughout the country came here to listen to what we're doing. So you're probably going to see some of these rules into other states as well. It's really important to see. Just some resources, and I can share this with everyone else later. But looking forward to the questions you have for me and from the panel. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. And if you don't know Gary, he's been a huge proponent of making all this come through and pushing for the housing. We've been way behind on housing for a very long time. If you check out the regional housing needs allocation. So this is getting us closer. We still aren't there because it's 12,000 units is what we're supposed to average. Yeah, and we just did 9,000 is what you said? And that was, I think, the best year I've ever heard. Yeah, so we're getting closer, but we are on the appropriate side of the supply and demand curve if you own property. So next what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump to some questions. I did reach out, asked a few people what they were wondering, put some ideas out, received a few Venmos, and we're gonna see what happened here. So, first question is gonna be for Frankie of ADU Geeks. What is involved in getting an ADU done on a property from start to finish? Obviously, higher level, not like call us, do this, do that. So, yeah.
Can everybody hear me? So yeah, we break it down to basically 4 steps. Gary just covered a lot of detail and a lot of nuance between different zonings or whatnot. So the first phase is the feasibility stage. It's probably the most important in any phase of development. Architects and designers will tell you. So the feasibility, letting you know what you can and can't do. Then you move into your design phase, where you're building your concepts, your construction plans. Then you go into permitting, which we all love. And then once you get blessed with your permits, then you move into your construction phase.
Got it. So the first step is just understanding from a high level what you're going to do, what can be done. So this is the feasibility. Concept is this is what it looks like. Construction docs is stuff that we look at and wonder what it is. Permitting is when it goes into Gary's team over at the city. And then the final is when we get to work with contractors who are always honest and on time. So, excellent. Thank you. This next question is going to be for Gary. Is currently right now in the city of San Diego, we have gone through, I said that way wrong. Right now in the city of San Diego, we've gone through a process of bringing on private contractors to help review plans. Over the last 12 months, and this started, I think the day we last presented was actually the first day.
Correct.
Since that's happened, what have you seen on that timeline and what are the results looking like for people processing permits?
Right, that's an important part of the equation because the state told us you got to review these within 60 days. Try to do it in 30 days. We didn't have adequate staffing, went to council, got approval for outside plan check consultants that we could farm some of this work out, open up some areas for them to do other work on. So we had about 1,400 projects in a queue to get assigned to be reviewed. So we were looking at long delays, 9, 12 months to like get through some of these projects. It's going to depend on the scope, whether you're doing a small interior garage conversion up to these bonus projects, which are almost like multifamily apartment buildings. So it depends, but we have them based on the scope. I mean, they can be an over-the-counter rapid review, kind of same-day review where it's set up, reviewed by staff, and you're getting the comments back. We're typically seeing in your detached AD maybe around 3 to 4 months. On our side, to get it from start to finish, so you have to work with your design team, that they're responsive in getting back with the city. But we do have adequate staffing now. We have virtual appointments to handle any comments that are brought up. And typically they're on the structural, fire, life safety issues. The planning and zoning group has really narrowed down all these issues, so to get them through pretty quickly. But as you're looking at older developed sites and some of the building code requirements, it gets challenging sometimes. But budget about 3 months with the city.
Awesome. And I think it's key for us to understand as we're helping clients or as we're doing these projects that there are 2 components in that. So there is going to the city and actually turning your permit in, and when it comes back, before I started doing this, I thought one person looked at it. There's multiple disciplines, multiple reviews, and each one is going to check it off at a different point based on you answering the questions or problems that they have. So he said, life safety, structural, those usually are the biggest linchpins in these projects. So you're going to get comments back in your designer, your design team, maybe like your architect or your ADU geeks or whoever it is that's responsible for responding to those is going to bring those questions to you with a solution and options. And then they're going to resubmit those plans again. So these are your cycles of review. So it isn't just on the city, it's actually on you, the city, then on your team, then on the city. And then maybe many times I see things are usually 3 cycles, it seems like, to get all the way through by the time we work it out. So just so everyone understands that part. Next, For the fees associated with this, Gary, if you have an idea or a breakdown on what the fees are associated with processing, permits, water, sewer, diff, and school, so people can understand it's not just a permit fee, it's many other things.
Right, and that's an important distinction. People always blame the city for all these fees. They're not all my fees. So, as you indicated, processing, we try to get it done within 3 reviews. And there's a plan check fee that's up front that starts that review clock. We're looking at, depending on the scope, anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 for a permit fee. That's for our plan check review team and our inspectors to do the review and inspections. So that's just our side. Water and sewer could range, it depends on if you're adding capacity, if you need to increase the meter size. So that could be a couple grand there. Diff fees, the city of San Diego exempts you up to 750 square feet, so there's no diff fee, and that's why we saw a lot of the interest in this program, because those diff fees can get kind of high. School fees are around $5 a square foot, and that's going to depend on the school district as well.
Excellent. Next are the fees associated with a design firm in actually getting it done. Obviously, what you guys have in-house and what design costs are. Just an idea, so people can understand, I'm paying these fees, now I have to pay somebody to actually make this a reality. What does that look like?
Sure, yeah, so when you're looking at your soft costs for your build, in addition to everything that Gary just mentioned, which is essentially the cost of development, right? These fees that you're gonna pay regardless of how you do it. Our design team, our fee not only covers the schematic design, the construction plans, the communication with all your vendors, your structural, Title 24, but it also includes all the project management. That key component that was mentioned is, hey, the city says they can do this within 3 to 5 months. Well, inside of that are the review comments and how efficiently your design team can respond to those. Take a look at those, come up with an idea, get it to the designer, make the adjustment, and get it submitted back to the city. That lag in time is where you hear, wow, permits are taking a year. Well, you just heard it, permits aren't taking a year, it's that turnaround time. So our fees include all of that project coordination and management, as well as the designs from issuance, or from concepts to from issuance.
Yeah, it's important to have somebody to project manage. It's a full-time job sometimes with some of these projects, and following up with the city and the reviewers and your entire design team.
Yeah, absolutely. And then fees obviously range depending on size and scope of your project.
Awesome. Now this question is one I get all the time, and I know that it varies dramatically, but it's going to be the one everyone wants the answer to. So I'm going to ask you, Frankie, here. What is the average price per square foot of build on an ADU? And we will hold you to this.
Yeah, it's always a fun question I get when a client costs. And then God bless the internet, because the answer's there, right? So they're just checking me against the internet. Generally speaking, and I know this is being recorded, but for a smaller unit, you're looking at conversion. A good rule of thumb for a conversion of space, say a garage or conversion of some accessory space, where structurally speaking everything is sound, you can use somewhere around $225 a square foot as far as your construction, your materials, and then whatever that number comes out to, I'd add another, call it 20 to 25% for your soft costs, like design and permits and all the things that Gary was mentioning. If you're looking at detached, 1-story, ground up stick built, use that same kind of formula, but start off with around 300 square feet, 300 square foot. Anything 2 stories, I typically go 325 and then up from there, right? With a really strong, heavy caveat. We're talking rental grade, regular, nothing luxury, flat ground, no geography to consider, because it can add up considerably. Which is why, again, the feasibility is so important to get an accurate, transparent cost estimate to know exactly what this is going to look like.
Yeah, I like to explain to people. So if you're building 1 ADU, or if you're doing a bonus project and you're putting 8, you're going to have a different cost, because
Absolutely.
you still have to do 1 trench. That's going to be very expensive, but you're dividing it across 8 units instead of over 1 unit. So you'll see these costs skyrocket if you're doing your 1 800 square foot ADU versus if you're doing 10 800 square foot ADUs. The same exact design will cost less, just because you have an economy of scale there.
Correct.
So that's something to keep in mind. So we are running out of time, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have a lot of questions up here. So sorry we couldn't get to all of them. But we'll be floating around if you guys, well, not actually floating, we don't have those skills, but we'll be around. So feel free to come up and ask us anything you want, and thank you for attending.
Thank you.
And she was hoping for 250 a foot. So